Fleet Bank, founded in 1791 as the Providence Bank in Rhode Island, rose to become one of the largest financial institutions in the United States. In the late 80s and 90s, Fleet began to aggressively buy and merge with smaller institutions across the Northeast region. In 1991, Bank of New England became one of Fleet's most notable acquisitions of the time, but not without opposition, including efforts to block the sale by a small advocacy group from Boston, led by Bruce Marks. Bruce Marks believed that Fleet was involved in a practice known as reverse redlining, where minority homeowners were targeted with high-interest second mortgages. These mortgages were unaffordable and robbed homeowners of their home equity. Bruce Marks had declared war against predatory lending and its practices, and a billion-dollar institution in Fleet was no exception.
We're staying here to meet with
No, you're not staying here to meet with
Well, then you're going to have to arrest us.
Bruce Marks remained a thorn on Fleet's side for years with the same fierce resolve of exposing top executives and publicize them in order to be held accountable. Fleet CEO Terrence Murray eventually conceded to NACA's pressure and allegations about Fleet finance. They finally caved, offering an $8 billion loan initiative for low-income borrowers. Fleet settled lawsuits with hundreds of millions of dollars of payments to the victims. NACA received $140 million to fund its mortgage product. In 1995, the Fleet agenda continued with the merge with Shawmut Bank and becoming a regional powerhouse holding 30% of all deposits in New England. In 1999, Fleet acquired Bank Boston, which itself was a product of a recent merger in 1996 of Bank of Boston and Bay Bank. The new Fleet Boston was the 7th largest bank in the United States, bringing in revenues of close to $12 billion per year. Days after the takeover of Bank Boston physically began, complaints of an increase on fees of hundreds of thousands of customers ran rampant.
I have checking, savings, and a cash reserve, and they're automatically taking your money from your account to pay into your cash reserve, and that's going on. And that's not fair.
Every type of transaction, they've raised the fees on ATMs, they've raised the fees on customer service. Every fee has increased since the acquisition, and that is unfair to all depositors. Everyone should be out here.
After an onslaught of calls from customers complaining about fees and the merger, Attorney General Thomas Riley got involved, taking a closer look at the merger.
Perhaps there's a need for Fleet to rethink its approach here, in terms of particularly if they're going to be charging fees to people that have to see a teller.
John O'Connor, a longtime activist for affordable health care, joined the fight for fair banking alongside Bruce Marks.
Now they have a new, sophisticated way of taking too much. You know, they get a monopoly, so people don't have a choice.
So even after settling with Fleet, when the bank began charging predatory fees, NACA challenged them again.
Demanding change from New England's largest bank, protesters stormed Fleet's shareholder meeting.
Unfair fees, that's why we're here.
Isn't it outrageous that they charge us to use our money?
Bruce Marks and NACA made their presence felt and heard as they were able to get all the way to the doors of the Fleet annual shareholders meeting, only to be blocked from entering. The reason was improper documentation.
Today is tax day within New England. We're protesting the Fleet tax on working people
Why this tactic?
because it's the only way to get their attention.
A couple of weeks ago, Fleet Bank, which is now the conglomeration of what were 4 large banks in Massachusetts, announced that it would no longer have free checking, no longer have accounts with no charge that don't have a minimum balance. Basically, customers will be paying $8 a month to have an account, as well as $2 every time they want to talk to a person.
It's personal for Bruce Marks as NACA continued to wage its war on Fleet.
Residents of New England, well, they are subject to the dominance of Fleet Bank, and we've got to stop that.
While the mega banks reap record profits, it is poor and working families that are most hit hard by unfair fees.
The state wants to get involved in regulating bank fees. A proposal is afloat that would make banks get the state's approval before they can raise fees for customers.
The Bank Fee Fairness Act was sponsored by State Representative Jared Barrios of Cambridge, Massachusetts, along with 21 other state representatives who co-sponsored the bill.
It merely seeks to create a reasonable relationship between the fee charged and the cost that is actually incurred to the bank. We don't want consumer price gouging.
The Bank Fee Fairness Act would require banks to justify any increases in fees, and it would also give the state banking commissioner the power to reject those increases.
It might be a short-term benefit to change banks, but a long-term harm because they're going to follow the fleet standard.
Bruce Marks and his relentless campaign against Fleet was a wake-up call for Congress and the entire country as the illegal and immoral practices of Fleet landed in the spotlight of national media.
It's a matter of interest, literally a matter of interest, that's moved the Attorney General of the state of Georgia to begin a major investigation into Fleet Finance, the highly profitable subsidiary of Fleet, the 14th largest bank holding company in the country.
Racial discrimination and a denial of credit to people who are creditworthy in this country because they are being excluded from the system, either on racial grounds or geographic grounds or because they're in certain neighborhoods, is absolutely un-American.
Fleet Bank was eventually acquired by Bank of America in 2004. Bank of America inherited the poor customer service reputation from Fleet and its disarray of problems in consumer banking and its financial products. Bank of America has since devoted significant resources in improving its customer service reputation, particularly in its New England branches. NACA's relentless actions and campaigns continue to have national impact on predatory lending and its practices.